Pro-Israel lawyer Natasha Horsdorf just said the most absurd thing to Lewis Goodall on LBC. Let's take a look.
Did you know
There
that
is
Israel controls
spread.
65% of Gaza, which is beyond even the 53% agreed under the ceasefire by Donald Trump? So that
Ceasefire
government
has
is
just been
going beyond
updated,
even
isn't it?
what
No,
Donald
again,
Trump thinks
I'll
is
deal
a
with
good
that point.
idea.
This is a measure that has just been updated in the last 2 days because of the Board of Peace's failure to negotiate the disarmament of Hamas. There have been further
We're out of time. Very simple question to you, Natasha. We're out of time. Do you believe, Natasha, do you believe that there should be any limits to Israeli settlement in the West Bank? Yes or no?
I have a serious problem with this idea that Jews should not be permitted to live in certain areas because they are Jews. And
No, it's just because they're the homes of Palestinians. It's nothing to do with the fact they're Jewish. They're someone else's home.
Incorrect.
It's someone else's home.
Incorrect.
These people have lived in the West Bank for generations.
No, this is built on state land. It is categorically a misrepresentation, Lewis, that you have just suggested that anyone has been dispossessed as a result of these proposals. Even the Peace Now website, which is one of the biggest attackers of these proposals.
Israel hasn't dispossessed anybody in the West Bank.
No, it certainly has not.
Boo, boo, boo. Is she living in the same reality we are? Make it make sense. Do you know what I will start doing if people say things that I don't like? This conversation's over. We have to move on. Or I just turn my back to them. I think what makes this whole exchange so insane is that when Lewis Goodall asks whether Israel has dispossessed anyone in the West Bank, she responds with, oh, it certainly has not. Like, really? Denying the extensively documented process of displacement taking place across an occupied territory, and you say no? How do you even begin to deny that? Natasha initially attempts to narrow the conversation by claiming it is a misrepresentation, to suggest that anyone who has been dispossessed specifically as a result of the latest proposals. But Goodall then removes that escape route by asking the broader and much clearer question, has Israel dispossessed anybody in the West Bank? And her answer still remains no. And it's therefore important that we respond to the claim that she actually makes rather than constructing a more defensible argument on her behalf, because, quote unquote, Israel has not dispossessed anyone in the West Bank is a claim contradicted by an enormous body of evidence. The immediate context is that Israel's security cabinet has approved this, an allocation of $434 million for 34 new West Bank settlements. I hate the word settlement. It's so horrid. Settlements require territory, segregated infrastructure, access roads, checkpoints, and restrictions upon Palestinians already living around them. The settlement they speak of is not merely the building of things in a place, it is the entire system of power constructed around it. And that is why Lewis Goodall was right not to sanitize her answer as merely another perspective. Because what we've seen historically, broadcasters who are so committed to the theatre of impartiality that one guest can describe the documented material world whilst another denies it, and the presenter will be like, well, politely thanking both sides as though truth exists exactly halfway between them, that there is a centre between them. No, there is no centrist position when it comes to this. Goodall instead identified the answer as absolutely absurd and ended that exchange, because I think journalistic fairness does not require a broadcaster to pretend that every demonstrably false statement becomes respectable once it's delivered by a barrister. However, the deeper scandal is that Horsdorf's claim represents an extreme version of something Western politics has done continually. Governments condemn individual outposts whilst funding and arming the state protecting them. They repeat that settlements undermine a two-state solution whilst allowing the territory required for that state to be steadily absorbed. And they invoke a rules-based international order whilst treating its rules as optional whenever enforcing them would require confronting an ally. Curtis. My AirPod just fell out my ear. What are your reactions to this?
I think this is why we shouldn't platform people like Horstoff anymore. Because the frustrating thing here is that it wasn't long ago that we were discussing Lewis Goodall with Hassan Piker, and Lewis Goodall was empirically pushing Israeli propaganda. Now, Lewis Goodall isn't someone like the vast swaths of people who write at the Jewish Chronicle, who does complete an utter genocide apologia. He's not one of those who's literally a deranged Zionist in which he pretty much cheers the death of Palestinians. Like, he does have some kind of conscience, right? He would and does call out when Israel kills Palestinians. He does call out settler violence and settlers, which he did do here. But ultimately, he does push Zionist propaganda, and he did it loads against Hassan Piker. Now, the reason why I don't think Horsdorf should be platformed is, one, because she's utterly deranged, and she is literally pushing the most grotesque genocide apologia, not Zionist apologia, but genocide apologia. But two, it makes someone like Lewis Goodall and LBC balanced, because they'll look at the interview that Lewis Goodall gave to Hassan Piker, and then they'll look at this interview, and then Lewis Goodall can claim that, do you know what? I'm impartial. I'm not biased one side or the other. Here's me, criticizing Hassan Piker, and here's me criticizing Horsdorf. And it gives that false framing of impartiality, in which the BBC try and claim that they are. Oh, well, the left hate us and the right hate us, therefore we're really, really good. No, sometimes your editorial is just dog shit. And I would view LBC and Lewis Goodall through the same lens. Now, Lewis Goodall, I think, on many other issues is all right. He's probably a liberal, right? He's just standard Labour guy. But when it comes to Israel Palestine, he's atrocious, and we have to, on the left, take a hard line on Israel Palestine. It's not taxes where we can just debate level of taxation and have a nice harmonious and lovely conversation about taxation. No, this is genocide. There's no sliding scale. It's right or wrong. Okay, you're either for it or you're against it. Okay, you can't. It makes some excuses, right? There's no half measures, and which is what Lewis Goodall does, right? You can't do half measures on genocide, which is why Lewis Goodall is atrocious on Israel. But platforming Horsdorf gets to sort of, he gets to show the people that he's really good on this, because he criticizes both sides when he doesn't. Now, Horsdorf, she's a lawyer. She's very, very good at putting forth arguments and going into the minute details and making it sound like that she's right, because your average person who probably doesn't understand the internal conflicts might be like, well, she knows what he's talking about, and Lewis Goodall cut her off at the end. But again, she's a lawyer. Lawyers are supposed to spin bullshit. That's the point. But ultimately, what she said at the end, she couldn't help herself by ending the argument to the classic old, it's anti-Semitic to call out Israel. And by the way, Sarah, you are absolutely right when you say settler is a horrible word, because settler really dilutes the meaning of what it is. You are ripping up people who have lived in a particular part of the world, who've lived there for generations, and you're forcibly moving them out violently, bulldozing their homes, killing them, dragging them out, humiliating them, jailing them, and just moving in. And yet they call them settlers. It's not settlers. You are occupying the land. And Horsdorf is trying to once again do the whole thing, which is, oh, Lewis, you don't want Jewish people living on a land? He didn't mention Jewish people. Did anyone hear him say Jews can't have land? No, he didn't say that. Once again, Horsdorf is using the Jewish identity to protect the disgusting crimes of Israel. And ultimately, her argument falls apart when she does that. But another thing she says is that, the analysis from like human rights organizations and the ICC and the ICJ are just analysis and opinion. Well, anything, I guess, is an opinion, but when you have opinion based on strong evidence, when you have it on big public bodies, it's not just some random person saying it. These are global bodies are saying this is plausibly a genocide, or there is an occupation going on and settler violence is happening, and just the fact that settlers exist is wrong and illegal. Then you can't just turn around and say, well, it's not in our jurisdiction, or it's not completely proven. No, it's completely rubbish. It's actually the same thing that the BBC do. Whenever you have someone on the left or someone call out Israel's genocide, like you can find so many examples of Zach Polanski saying, Israel's committing a genocide, you notice how every single BBC presenter says at the end of it, just to say, though, Israel would deny it's a genocide, and technically they haven't proved it. You don't actually have to add that context in, even if it's not proven, because ultimately we have eyes and ears so we can see the ongoing genocide, but there is so much evidence. And the ICJ have ruled that there's a plausible genocide taking place. Now, obviously, I wish they would just come out and say there is a genocide, but just because they haven't said, oh, there is a genocide, doesn't discount all of the evidence, all of the footage that we have seen. And yet the BBC will still say, but Israel would defend themselves. Now, if you were to talk about Russia, and someone went on TV and said, I think Vladimir Putin's committing a genocide against the Ukrainian people, you would not have a single BBC presenter say, but just to say that Russia would deny that they're causing a genocide or they're engaging in genocide, and it's not been officially proven yet. They wouldn't do that tap dancing around for Israel, but the BBC do, and that's exactly what Natasha Horsthoff's doing.